Hello world, this is Stefan of Lendergan Games. Before I even start explaining myself, file descriptor 1, I apologize for the 2 years of radio silence. Everybody else he had donated to my Patreon for a while, so he deserves an apology at the very least. The short answer for the 2-year gap is that life and despair happened. In mid-2023, a game development support company approached me. I won't say who it was, mainly because I don't want to defame them by association with me, but also because making sense of why they even noticed me would require unusually close attention to my Facebook page, and please don't do that regardless. At any rate, the talks did inspire me to start writing a game design document. When I finished the first draft of that document, it reminded me of my own advertising joke. It slices, it dices, it widens your teeth. My original plan was to remake Castle of the Winds, except with options for more interesting pacifist runs. But when I laid it out in writing, the two goals just didn't belong in the same game. I've realized now that dropping most of the slicing and dicing will give adequate space for the teeth whitening, but at the time the realization was jarring. Not long after that, I realized that animating this was roughly equal to hand-drawing Diablo 2 in its entirety. That's when the despair really kicked in. As for how life kicked in my liver and knees, that comes from getting replies back from only retail work. The sheer irregularity of retail work exhausts me mentally, even on a good week, so my following attempts at restarting game development were inched forward painfully and painfully slowly. After Godot broke everything that I had made thus far, I tried to move my paper dolling skills to a visual novel style of game. The question then was the engine. Twine started out promising, but then actually stacking images on top of each other turned out to be a problem that I just couldn't solve. RPG Maker started out reasonably as well. My problem started when I wanted to add a bizarre and obscure attribute to the player character. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's called stamina. After all the research, I found that only two options existed for adding it to the game. Either I learn JavaScript or I buy an RPG Maker plugin. How do I put enemies on both sides of the player character for a nice relaxing group massage? Learn JavaScript or buy a plugin. How do I make running decrease mana so that I can just rename that to stamina? Third verse, same as first. After finally looking more seriously into Ren'Py, or Ren'Py, however you want to pronounce it, it turned out to be perfect for stacking images right out of the box. The next step was to find an advanced poser for Daz 3D. Even if I learned posing properly, working retail would cripple just posing or just programming, so doing all three at once would be impossible. I did manage to find an experienced Daz poser, but things complicated themselves between now and when he last worked with Daz. He has a decade of experience with Daz's 8th generation of models, but Genesis 8 has become Genesis 8.1, throwing things off just enough to complicate things more than he has the time and energy to figure out. Another game idea was a hack-and-slash game on Unreal 5, inspired by Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. After figuring out some minor things, I have gotten no closer to wrapping my head around how Unreal 5 operates. I'll need a tutorial that shows me how to build something from scratch before I understand some fundamentals on Unreal 5, but I've not found any of those, so the engine is so far impenetrable for me. The third attempt was a 3D attempt at Final Fantasy III mechanics. Not the Super Nintendo one, the original Nintendo one that never left Japan. That's how I truly started to realize how much I would need to learn how to make a 3D game, and retail work has not been kind to concentration. That all explains why I have no new projects on my horizon. The good news, though, is that I've learned from RPG Maker that 2-frame animations are possible. My mind was still stuck on 5 to 7 frames per animation back when I ran numbers for the workload, because that's how many frames most 2D games use. Actually, seeing the RPG Maker sprite sheet has helped me figure out an actual solution to my previous, but not completely unreasonable, despair. With that information, I have started working on the roguelike again from scratch. What's there now has too many foundational problems to keep, but that's just the nature of creating art. For me, the first draft always teaches the next draft how to be better. Of course, now that my retail job is understaffed, it's even more draining, and I'm still trying to wire myself back to productivity after letting go of it for 2 years. Fortunately, I have managed to lay down some foundation for the next draft. In short, I don't know whether life will even let me work on this again, but I now have a clearer map towards finishing this game. Now, my original draft was supposed to end there, but between when I wrote this and when I managed to actually start recording, I started working with ChatGPT for actual counter-arguments to my godhood theory in the previous video, since none of the intellectuals I knew have given one to me. It ended up calculating that my theory is one of the best explanations for reality itself. So I'm getting the 400 function calculator to help me write an entire booklet about it. To clarify, my game development sits on the back burner regardless, because until my schedule stabilizes, I need help with anything creative, and the only reason this book is moving forward is because I'm getting help. With any luck, selling existential help might even help me get enough money to make this game. After all, a sucker is born every minute.